Welcome to beautiful Miami, Florida. This tropical paradise is home to a melting pot of insurance scammers, OnlyFans models, crypto bros, and me. I've been living in Miami for all but my youngest years, and it's not just where I live, it's home, a place that's interwoven with my memories, senses, and emotions. It has a particular feeling, a vibe, if you will. A vibe often captured well by American pop culture, which has had its eye fixed on Miami for decades, harkening back to the heyday of Hollywood. Miami has not been ignored by pop culture, and yet I still get excited whenever any movie or TV show takes place here. I remember losing my mind when I read Elmore Leonard's Get Shorty when I was 12, because parts of it are not only set in Miami, but at one point Leonard name drops a mall that was just a few blocks from where I grew up. Pop culture's eyes weren't just watching Miami, it was watching my neighborhood. Miami doesn't show up as often in media as New York and Los Angeles, so it always felt a little bit more special. A feeling that was elevated to the surreal once I could walk around in it in a video game. Though some, of course, felt a lot more like Miami than others. A 1988 Knight Rider game for the NES rendered Miami as well as you'd imagine a 1988 Knight Rider NES game would, which is to say, almost not at all. Granted, it contains all of the components required to build your own Miami, like land, sea, air, building, and even bird, but alas, I can't say this one's filling me with a sense of place. It's Miami in name, sure, but it doesn't remind me of home. That's the mission I undertook on and off over the past year. I wanted to play as many games set in Miami as possible to figure out not just which ones are the most accurate, but which ones felt the most like the place that I know and call home. The ones that captured the most vibe of a place that is quite vibey. I'm interested in how game developers from all over the world and different eras in gaming history use the technologies of their time to digitally recreate a real-life place that I happen to know pretty well. Luckily, video game graphics got a lot better after 1988's Knight Rider, to the point where Miami went from this to this. Microsoft Flight Simulator's depiction of Miami is about as close as video game recreations of cities can get. But it does reveal an issue I anticipated going into this. When the simulation is too accurate, it gets boring. It loses something by trying to be everything. It's about as close to a digital one-to-one recreation of Miami as you'll ever see, and I feel no emotional connection to it. It is by far the most accurate representation of the city in this entire video, and at the same time, it's not even close. It's like the uncanny valley but for land masses. There's a spark missing, a sense of life that isn't there. It makes me feel like I'm looking at a diorama that you'd see in the lobby of City Hall. It's a very nice diorama, but it's ultimately just a very expensive action figure playset. In Flight Simulator, Miami is just gray lines cutting through sheets of green. I recognize the patterns of the lines and they lead to places that I know, and it's all just a part of what Flight Simulator aims to deliver. The overwhelming totality of the Earth, where you can fly from New York to New Zealand in real time. Its illusion is so convincing that there were a few moments rewatching the gameplay footage that I forgot I was looking at a video game. Strip away the UI and it might as well be the real thing. It's a remarkable accomplishment, but sometimes an artist's interpretation of reality can get us closer to the truth than a snapshot of the real thing. And that reveals my real problem with Flight Simulator's Miami. It's not its sweeping vistas, which it depicts well enough. It's the ground. The street level in Flight Simulator only exists to reinforce the idea that you're really up high in the air, man, which is, intended. That's the whole point of the game. It's all about soaking in things from afar. Here on the streets, this is the part of life I really want to experience. But Microsoft Flight Simulator can't deliver that. It wasn't designed to. I'm looking for something more than just the sky. Flight Simulator and 2018's The Crew 2 have similarly lofty ambitions. They're both attempts at capturing the totality of a massive landscape, but The Crew 2 pares down its scope to only the entirety of the continental United States. The Crew 2 is huge for a video game that actually has things to do in it. It's an open-world racing game that lets you seamlessly shift between cars, planes, and boats as you take part in races across the United States. But the game part of this video game is its least interesting aspect. The real star is its impressive scaled-down recreation of an enormous country, including several of its major cities, small towns, landmarks, and all the geographical iconography in between. A flight from Miami to Seattle took about 45 real-life minutes in the game's starter plane, with some sightseeing tours in St. Louis and Chicago just to give you a better sense of how big the map is. Its smaller scale allows each city to have its own semblance of personality. You're still getting a lot of broad generalizations, but now there's room for some ground level detail and a splash of artistic flair here and there. Its version of Miami tosses in some landmarks that are instantly recognizable to locals, but it's still mostly a cursory rendering of the city. This makes The Crew 2 a great showcase for the decisions game developers make when they're editing a real-life city down to its most visually intriguing parts before jamming it all together in an explorable virtual world. Miami Beach connects to downtown through a series of photogenic bridges and man-made island chains. The towering glitz of luxury condos that dot its skyline gives way to smaller historical neighborhoods like Little Havana and Coral Gables. Every real-life neighborhood west of Coral Gables has been removed until you hit the Everglades, even though there are many miles of civilization between the two. They cut out tons of neighborhoods because none of them provide the picturesque drama that needs to blur into the periphery of a thrilling racing game. No one wants to race supercars alongside strip malls and shady plastic surgery centers when you've got a shimmering ocean and neon-lit bars just a few miles east. Sacrifices must be made, not just to cut down on file size, but to maintain your interest. Because like all cities, Miami has boring parts. Developers are always going to give you Miami Beach and downtown. It's the neighborhoods that get included from there that inform the kind of game you're making. Coral Gables is a wealthy neighborhood with big, beautiful banyan trees that canopy the streets. It's dotted with well-preserved Spanish architecture, like Coral Gables City Hall, which I'll talk about again a little bit later. It's just generally nice to drive through. It feels like an old European city mixed with 20th century small-town Americana. It's like if Leave It to Beaver took place in Spain. Of course you'll want to drive a Ferrari through that, even if the Crew 2's version provides you only the most bare-bones interpretation in the neighborhood. You'll be less enthusiastic to drive like you're trying to rip through the fabric of space-time among the houses and strip malls of Kendall, a vast suburban sea on the southwest side of the city that so far has not been featured in a game. The Crew 2 better illustrates the real-life layout of Miami by cutting out a lot of it and instead presenting an idealized fantasy. It's doing what racing games should do, and that's to create a greatest hits version of a city, something easily identifiable from up close and afar without worrying too much about accuracy. If Flight Simulator's version of Miami is unknowable, the Crew 2's Miami wants you to know it, but not too well. It's got things to do. There are traffic laws to break and vehicles to transmogrify because, as I mentioned, the Crew 2's primary gameplay mechanic is being able to shift between car, boat, and plane whenever you want. It's a fun mechanic, if a bit clunky, but it did its job of offering me a near-instant perspective shift that let me appreciate the work they put into crafting these cities from all angles. Because here's the odd part about the Crew 2. It wants to showcase cities at a street level, but its grand scale ambitions mean there just can't be that many ground level details that provide a sense of place, which is fine. For me, its version of Miami feels like it was built to be seen while soaring just above the rooftops by plane. I am biased here, but Miami is the best looking city in the Crew 2, and the best way to appreciate it is from the sky. From the sky, the Crew 2's Miami captures a real sense of place. It doesn't feel like that place has much history, and I never felt the imprint of the odd mishmash of human personalities that provides Miami its unique vibe, but from just above the rooftops, cutting between the buildings, occasionally recreating the opening helicopter shot of South Beach from the birdcage, it feels familiar. Like I've been here before. I've spent hours flying just barely above Miami from South Beach to the Everglades, from North Miami to the Keys, all while marveling at how well they captured the Miami you only see in high-definition desktop wallpapers. But it's down here, on the ground level, that I want to find the little details that feel like home. The Crew 2 just doesn't deliver that. The most recent game as of this video's publication to depict ground-level Miami with modern fidelity and detail was Hitman 2. No, not that Hitman 2, the other Hitman 2, the one that's not called Hitman 2 anymore. In the game's second mission, called The Finish Line, Agent 47 has to kill a race car driver during a Formula 1-style race that twists through downtown Miami. Hitman games are all about the tiny details of a world that allow you to pull off an assassination however you see fit. But strangely, that's where Hitman 2's representation of Miami falls apart. The ground level detail is more focused on the mission and the race event than on the city. Miami is mostly reduced to a pretty skybox. But it is pretty, if a bit confusing. Hitman 2's Miami is mostly concerned with the high concept premise of an assassination in the middle of a major racing event. It still manages to capture some truths while mostly having fun with the idea of Miami. Hitman 2 toes the line between faithful recreation and riff. When I look to the right from the starting area, I see the modernist luxury condo skyscraper that I've always called the Bacon Building because the top of it looks like bacon. In real life, it's called 50 Biscayne, but, Bacon Building for life. Immediately behind the starting area is Hitman 2's version of the Intercontinental Hotel, where I attended high school prom. The rest of the level looks like it combines Bayfront Park, which is a park downtown where they hold music festivals, Bayside, an open-air seaside mall that doubles as an unpleasant tourist trap, and the Kaseya Center, formerly the American Airlines Arena, where the Miami Heat play. In real life, these 3 locations are all connected along a handful of blocks running along Biscayne Boulevard. In Hitman 2, they all exist on top of each other, all in one location that doesn't look like any of them. Honestly, this level really hurts my brain to look at. I know exactly what it's trying to be, but it's a weird, contorted vision of a few real-life places that mixes fact and fiction in a way that's a little unsettling for a resident, while I'm sure someone who's not from here won't even notice and might even appreciate the fact that they prioritize designing a level for the sole purpose of killing one race car driver rather than accurately depicting a real-life place. IO Interactive's Hitman games are all about setting up and setting off an elaborate mousetrap of events that lead to the kill. Every level has multiple mousetraps, so you can set off whichever one you want as long as it gets the job done. There has to be some bending and twisting of any real-life place being depicted so they can weave all of their devious machinations into it. The elaborate mousetraps that make up each level are the stars of the show. Everything else is just gift wrap. As far as games that have fun with the idea of a city go, Hitman 2 does well to anchor me in the illusion despite the headaches I get staring at its amalgamation of landmarks. Their approach reminds me a little of the Hotline Miami games. Neither entry is going for an accurate depiction of its titular city, but they do a lot to convince you otherwise by telling some convincing lies. At the start of each mission, you're told that the people you have to slaughter are all at a specific address. When you see that address, you think, oh, if they're going the extra mile to show me an address, it must be real. Of course they're not. They're just a bunch of nonsense. But it's such highly convincing nonsense that when one of the addresses seems like it could have actually been at the location depicted in the game, it feels like an accident, like monkeys pounding on typewriters until Shakespeare pops out. Make up enough 1980s Miami addresses and you'll eventually land on a strip club. It's not hard. There's not going to be much recognition and fawning at the familiarity in the Hotline Miami games. In terms of play area, it doesn't present an explorable world. It's a series of levels presented as a top-down cross-section of a building that you run around in, turning people into goo. The game is set in Miami, but it's really set in these little self-contained mass murder dioramas, a little Barbie's dream house of 1,000 corpses. Hotline Miami is to Miami as a synthwave album cover is to Miami. It's idealized, it's fantasy. Hotline Miami is riffing on the idea of Miami, and it riffs hard. It's a game about a specific city in a specific era that had a specific style, all created by 2 dudes from Sweden who had never set foot in Miami. They had 2 inspirations influencing their design choices. One was a 2006 documentary about the Miami drug wars of the 1970s and 80s called Cocaine Cowboys. The other was the Ryan Gosling movie Drive, which is set in 2011 Los Angeles. Their only concept of the city is whatever pop cultural artifacts were exported overseas, and I could feel it in the game. This isn't Miami as recreated by people with boots on the ground, snapping pictures of architectural landmarks to be meticulously modeled on a PC back home. It's just 2 Swedish guys having fun with a dream of a place as different from their home as can be. Hotline Miami's Miami aesthetic cranked to 11 could not exist without the one depiction of Miami that cranked that knob to the max long before Hotline Miami ever did. A game released in 2002 is still one of the best video game depictions of Miami I've played. Even if its open world would be considered quaint by the modern standards of the genre, it captured everything and nothing that makes Miami the beautiful and often bewildering city that it is. It's an accurate recreation that's so removed from reality that calling it Miami would be a lie. It was given a whole new, garishly on-the-nose name that more accurately summed up its boardwalk character artist's contortion of the city. It was the kind of vibes-based impressionistic diorama of a city that only one game developer knows how to make. Grand Theft Auto Vice City is 1980s Reagan-era cocaine-fueled decadence and grime drenched in neon. It doesn't reflect its time, it captures our collective memory of a time as filtered through years of pop culture mutation and distillation to its most cartoonish iconography. Like how the 1970s are just bell-bottoms and disco balls to some people, and it is so fucking good. Every bit of it. Vice City is blood and coke and Ferraris and bikinis and teal shirts beneath white Armani suits with the sleeves rolled up. It's Miami at its most cartoonish ideal, and I love it because every major US city has at least one debauched, crime-filled era that its residents have romanticized to the point where they're not even imagining a real place anymore. And it's fine, as long as you can admit that real life was never quite like this, and anyone hoping for a return to those days might as well be reminiscing about their childhood growing up in Middle-earth. The game has even had an influence on the real-life city itself and how its residents view it. Today, there's a bunch of restaurants and shops throughout the city that all are called Vice City something or other that are owned and operated by late Gen Xers and millennials who grew up playing the game, and when it came time to open up their own coffee shops and pizza joints, could think of no better name. Vice City, as a game and a general pop cultural concept, is a cosmic vision of a city that would have been called Miami in a more boring alternate universe. Like The Crew 2, Vice City only considers a handful of neighborhoods. Considering how Rockstar's Red Dead Redemption 2 spanned multiple fictional states, Vice City's size didn't suffer from a lack of ambition but from technological feasibility. The whole city feels edited down to exactly and only what it needs to be to tell its story, a version of the city that mashes every 1980s Hollywood depiction of Miami into a giant, crass, neon-glowing blob that still feels vibrant and alive. What I find most impressive is how it's a fantastical version of Miami, but still finds nooks and crannies to squeeze in some true-to-life architectural iconography. Some of it persists to this day, while others are relics of Miami's past. Rockstar recreated a handful of real-life Miami landmarks like the South Point Lighthouse, the Fontainebleau Hotel, and even the old Miami Beach Water Tower, which is probably on the C list of iconic Miami landmarks. Of course, one of the major downfalls of any Rockstar production, especially in those days, was its sense of humor. You can't see it, but I'm vigorously finger-quoting right now. When it came to depicting its version of the iconic Colony Hotel in Miami Beach, Rockstar could not hold itself back from skewering it with their keen satirical eye by calling it the Colon Hotel. Colon, as in the organ that connects to the butt. If you like that joke, then you're in luck because they reused the model and the joke a block away on the same street, Vice City's version of Ocean Drive. A joke so good they used it twice, and how can you not? I mean, it's just so funny. I think I made it obvious that I'm in love with this map. Some of it is nostalgia, but thanks to the folks over at noclip.website, which is what I've been using to capture my Vice City footage, I've been able to explore the map in ways I only dreamed of as a kid. I'm still in awe of it nearly 25 years later. I remember driving around for hours trying to figure out where my home would likely be. It probably wasn't anywhere since my childhood home is one of the areas game devs cut to maintain interest and reasonable map size. I know it's not there, but I was still looking for it as I prepped this video because allowing fantasy and reality to coexist on the same screen at the same time is a magic trick that the ripoffs and trend chasers that followed failed to pull off.
Guess this is where they keep the rats to put in the burgers.
Bad Boys Miami Takedown is not a good game. It was released in 2004, originally set to be a tie-in with the DVD release of Bad Boys 2 the year before, but feels more like a game that was rushed into production the day after Vice City was released to capitalize on its phenomenal success. It doesn't feature an open world, and most of its version of Miami is set to an endless series of corridors that occasionally veer outside for a smoke break before rushing you back inside so you can shoot people and melons to receive a nearly equal amount of bad boy points in its dumb morality system. That said, Miami Takedown isn't explicitly trying to be a GTA clone, or even specifically a Vice City clone. It's a linear third-person shooter that pushes the limits of how much mid-combat witty banter you can stomach before you whip the game disc into the sea. If you think characters talking too much is a problem in gaming today, wait till you hear Dollar Store Will Smith tell Team U Martin Lawrence,
Damn, I needed that.
Needed what? The first aid or the guys to shoot your cojones off in the first place?
for the 80th time. But I digress, I've gotten off track, let's get back to the point at hand. Shit, awful, sucks, bad, what in the hell is this supposed to be? It's a fantastical vision of Miami, but not a creative one. It all feels more like the background of a mid-90s light gun arcade game where you get extra points if you conk bad guys on the head with coconuts you shot off of palm trees. To be clear, I just made up that mechanic and it does not appear in Bad Boys Miami Takedown, but if it did, it would be this game's only good idea. I really disliked playing this game. Not faring much better were the Miami Vice games. There were two of them. The first, simply titled Miami Vice, was released in 2004 for the PlayStation 2 and only in Europe as far as I can tell. It's based on the Miami Vice TV show and stars two character models that look like but are legally distinct enough from Don Johnson and Philip Michael Thomas that the publisher probably didn't have to pay royalties. Most of its levels aren't too dissimilar from what Bad Boys offers. A lot of general ideas that recall reality in only the most surface level ways. Few levels actually even dare to venture outside. Even fewer present a version of an indoor environment that could be geographically specific. This art gallery level has a nice tropical modernist 1980s touch that feels like it could have been a real place if not directly inspired by an actual location used in the show, but most of 2004's Miami Vice is so nondescript that it could have been set in any city's industrial district. When it spends some time outdoors, it fails its depiction of Miami mostly miserably. The second level in particular commits the biggest sin possible when depicting Miami in any sort of media: elevation. There should be none of it. The beach house level looks like a palatial Malibu mansion carved into the side of a big rock formation. The highest peaks you'll find in real-life South Florida are landfills. Miami is so lacking in elevation that the closest thing we have to a mountain peak is a garbage dump in Broward County that we affectionately refer to as Mount Trashmore to honor its majesty. It feels safe to say that there wasn't a whole lot of boots on the ground research poured into this one. The second Miami Vice game, called Miami Vice: The Game, came out in 2006 as a PSP exclusive. It was based on the extremely underrated Michael Mann Miami Vice movie starring Colin Farrell and Jamie Foxx. And in it, unfortunately, Miami is limited to basically just a bunch of pretty skyboxes. Low-res matte paintings with orange sunsets or black night skies with generic sets of buildings that are reminiscent of the city if I really force myself to believe. Levels don't offer much environmental diversity. It's an all-star team of early 2000s third-person shooter levels. Warehouses, chop shops, strip clubs, drug kingpin mansions whose only distinctive architectural features are the henchmen that pop in and out of cover. Some buildings could be from any city in America. Detroit, downtown Milwaukee, but you know it's Miami because of the palm trees. A boat chase level set in the Everglades reduces the vast swamp to a winding river, as if the Everglades were just a big canal instead of a vast expanse of grass and shallow water. That's why people use airboats in the Everglades and not speedboats. Having a propeller above the water means your propeller won't decimate the ecosystem it's chopping its way through, and it won't get stuck in the mud. There are 3 boat chase levels, 2 of which are set in the ocean, and I guess they just didn't want to model a whole airboat for just one level. There's plenty of room for artistic interpretation in games, even when recreating real-life locations. The Crew 2, Hotline Miami, and Vice City are proof of that. But sometimes things that are a little off aren't the result of a designer going on an artistic tangent in the name of adding value that otherwise couldn't have existed if they had to strictly adhere to the rules of reality. Sometimes it feels like not enough attention was paid to the little and big details, either purposely or mistakenly. It aims to be close enough while still not being close at all. It's not entirely hopeless though. 2 levels feel like Miami if you squint hard enough. One of the 3 boat chase levels winds through what could generously be considered the ritzy island neighborhoods between downtown and Miami Beach. And, kind of surprisingly, one of its levels is set in Stiltsville, a neighborhood of houses built on stilts out in the middle of Biscayne Bay, just off the coast of downtown. The first stilt houses were built in the 1930s to supply folks with bait, tackle, food, and some light offshore drinking and gambling during Prohibition. A little later, families moved in and called them home. They were destroyed by various hurricanes over the 20th century, particularly Hurricane Andrew in 1992, but some are still standing to this day after the boundaries of Biscayne National Park were expanded to include Stiltsville. In 2003, a nonprofit was established to preserve what was left of the historic structures. Stiltsville is not some abandoned relic of Miami's past. You can book it for a corporate event, a birthday party, or even take a scout troop there to learn about marine life, assuming your permit is approved by one of the building's caretakers. I gave you that little history lesson because in Miami Vice the Game, the Miami PD didn't notice that one of the largest, most heavily armed drug cartels in the world had taken over a local historical landmark less than 5 miles offshore and turned it into an Amazon fulfillment center for cocaine. To be fair though, the Miami Vice TV show did something similar in the 3rd episode of the 2nd season, an episode with the deliciously pulpy title, Out Where the Buses Don't Run. Hell yeah, great title.
Wanna play games? Okay, I'll play with you. You wanna clear up? Say hello to my little friend!
Scarface: The World Is Yours, released in 2006, is a game set in Miami based on a movie famously set in Miami that was occasionally shot on location in Miami, yet the game takes so many creative liberties when crafting a digital Miami that I never once had a sense of where I was supposed to be at any given time, or even what parts of the city inspired any of it outside of the one or two obvious locations like Miami Beach. The map is split into 4 neighborhoods: Little Havana, Downtown, North Beach, and South Beach. 4 real-life sections of the city that, even in the 80s, all had different architectural philosophies, different demographics that influenced that architecture, different landmarks, and differences in approaches to city planning and street layout. Back then, as they do today, those areas served different needs that are reflected in their feel and design. South Beach is the flashy tourist attraction that brings in the money. Little Havana was where Cubans first settled when they came to the States. For years, North Miami has been an odd mix of high-rise luxury apartments that lead directly into a weird mix of middle-class suburbia and low-income housing without an elegant transition in between any of it. Downtown is downtown, tall buildings and such. Each is a distinct land that a video game could, conceivably, turn into its own little visually distinct pocket universe of crime-riddled fun. But it didn't. It made every street, every building, every bridge, and every island feel so similar that even after driving around the map for several hours, I never developed a sense of where I was without consulting the map. It captures Miami only in the broadest strokes: oceans, islands, bridges, random shootings, but does little else to provide each neighborhood with an identity. It feels so lacking in anything that feels reminiscent of the real city that it probably should have been given a fictional name, but Tony Montana is to Miami as Batman is to Gotham, so here we are. If it's going for fiction, the source material holds it back from being able to root itself in fiction the way Vice City does. It doesn't give itself license to have fun. The World Is Yours is stuck between its desire to invent a whole new sandbox for fun tropical violence and its duty to at least somewhat recreate the real place they're claiming it to be. It accomplishes neither. Like the Elmore Leonard stories I read as a kid, 2004's Driver 3 is firmly grounded in the real world. It's not a satirical take on a city and its pop cultural image. It presents the most starkly realistic take on Miami outside a flight simulator. It even functions a little bit like a time capsule, capturing Miami as it was in the early 2000s. It's the Miami I saw driving around town with friends during my high school years. This could probably be used as a historical recreation in the way that history teachers use Assassin's Creed games to give students a more tactile feel of the distant past, but about man-made islands for rich people and gaudy monuments to boomer mediocrity, as I show you the Hard Rock Cafe for no reason. The Orange Bowl is where the 1972 perfect season Miami Dolphins played. It was demolished 4 years after Driver 3's release, replaced with whatever they're calling the stadium where the Miami Marlins self-flagellate every summer. The only way you can visit the home field of one of the greatest teams in North American professional sports history is by playing Driver 3. It's also where I watched a few kick-ass monster truck shows as a kid. I saw a metal Tyrannosaurus Rex shoot fire through its nostrils and chomp through a car years before Horizon Zero Dawn ever existed. For a game released in 2004, the level of detail is impressive, especially considering that only a third of the game takes place in Miami, with the rest of its playtime split between Nice and Istanbul. Yet Miami culture shines through a lot more than in most games I've covered here. There's a sense of life, a vibrancy that makes me feel like the developers really did their homework and did their best to bring a real-life city into a game with the relatively limited computing power they had at the time. Yeah, its version of the city can use a splash of Vice City's charms for my liking, but instead the developers chose to depict Miami realistically by artfully deploying that ground-level specificity I was looking for in Flight Sim and The Crew 2. According to a March 2003 cover story in Electronic Gaming Monthly, that was the intention. Martin Edmondson, the creative and managing director for Reflections Interactive Limited, now known as Ubisoft Reflections, is quoted as saying, "Miami has been in the design for Driver 3 for over 2 years, and we're modeling and creating a photoreal town. Then, of course, the first level of the original Driver was set in Miami. So, in a way, Rockstar copied us." Edmonton was probably more than a little annoyed that Driver 3 was by some considered to be a Vice City clone when he correctly stated that Miami had been a part of the Driver series since the beginning. But that was the reality of the era. Setting your game in Miami or in a Miami-like place was going to naturally draw comparisons to Vice City. Just like how being any kind of crime game at the time instantly got games slapped with the label of being a GTA clone for better or worse. Saints Row, GTA clone. The Getaway, GTA clone. The Simpsons Hit and Run, GTA clone. Later in the interview, Edmondson makes a clear distinction between the Driver and GTA series. He said, GTA went for a very cartoony look, we're after a photoreal look. Almost a year later, this time in a hands-on preview article with EGM, Edmondson reiterated the point, saying, I don't think the game would work half as well if we had gone for a cartoon-style interpretation of the cities. And he was correct. While the game overall may not have been able to compete with Rockstar's gameplay and story-driven magic, the team at Reflections did a remarkable job of recreating details that allowed me to not only recognize my hometown, but also make it feel like home. Driver 3 not only captures the vibe of Miami, but it captures the vibe of the specific neighborhoods that make up Miami, or at least the neighborhoods that they chose to include. While Vice City captures a similar feeling with some kind of magical Rockstar essence that's just floating in the air of their games, Driver 3 does it through specificity and attention to detail. It's kind of incredible, really. Every neighborhood feels the way it does to this day, to me at least, and of course, shifting it back like 20 years, but it captures it. It got it. Driver 3 nails it, even though it's not nearly as fleshed out and as complex and rich and textured as Vice City. It still captures something even more important than Vice City, and that is the real essence of a real place. The Biscayne Bay part of downtown that Hitman 2 mashed up into a confusing jumble that makes my head hurt feels mostly like the real thing. It feels like I'm walking through a PS2 version of reality. Driver 3's version of Little Havana doesn't feel like it was made by a team of game developers in England. It feels like it was handcrafted by tiny little digital Cubans that have been living in my PS2. It's rendered with aging strips of shops nestled along tight, busy streets. They even tossed in their little version of the iconic Little Havana restaurant Versailles, but for some reason they turned it into an apartment complex? Maybe it was a legal issue? I don't know. Same font though. That counts for something. The upscale neighborhood of Coconut Grove didn't feel like the real thing until I stumbled upon the game's shockingly faithful recreation of an open-air shopping area called Coco Walk. This entire area has been completely remodeled in the past few years. It looks nothing like this anymore. Driver 3 is the only way you can explore Coco Walk the way it used to be. A little quainter, a little less corporate, the epitome of the Mediterranean by way of Latin America aesthetic that runs through so much of the city. Driver 3 even does a really good job of recreating the specific vibes of the aforementioned Coral Gables. One massive house after another is separated by streets lined with big willowy banyan trees that canopy over you as you drive. It includes the Coral Gables landmark Biltmore Hotel. It manages to toss in the Alhambra Water Tower, and it gives us a better version of Coral Gables City Hall than the Crew 2 did 14 years later, and it even squeezes in Coral Gables High School. I went to night school there to make up an elective credit. I got an easy A in that building. Building a real-life city in a video game is about more than just physical details. It's about capturing an indescribable sense of place. It's something you can't specifically design or code into a game, but it's the sum total of everything you put into it. All the individual things you do design and code into it either get you one step closer to grabbing this feeling of specificity, or home in my case, or it pulls you away from it. I kept circling Driver 3's version of Coral Gables like I had an idea on the tip of my tongue, but I couldn't quite get it out. All of Driver 3's neighborhoods captured something homey and familiar, and it was capturing it through an attention to detail rather than pure vibes like Vice City. Because as I'm discovering, if you add enough specificity, you will capture a vibe, something that both looks and feels like the real thing, even if it's not necessarily vibey the way Vice City is. Because Vice City is not just these modern words we're using like it's vibey or it's a mood. No, that game is like a whole fucking emotion. There's happy, sad, and Vice City. I'm feeling a little Vice City today. How about you? I feel like shit. Thank you for asking. I was driving through Driver 3's Coral Gables. Its version of the area isn't really that big, it's only like a few streets, so this part didn't take nearly as long as I'm making it seem. But I was doing it for the same reason I like driving through that area aimlessly for no reason whatsoever in real life. It's pleasant. It's pretty. Coral Gables has a distinct personality and it expresses it on every street. It does things its own way, which is usually the old way since Coral Gables cares about preserving its architectural history, even if that history is often stupid and impractical. Way back in the 1920s, a rich guy named George Merrick created the city of Coral Gables as a planned community within Miami. In doing so, he created a legacy and reputation for Coral Gables that stands to this day. A legacy that was not so scientifically quantified by a 2015 poll that determined that Coral Gables was the second snobbiest city in all of Florida. The 2025 edition of the poll has Coral Gables in 6th place, in case you were wondering. As such, its residents have a long history of not wanting to clutter their sightlines with silly, superfluous signage that could actually help someone navigate its confusing streets. Instead of having 7-foot-tall street signs like a normal city, Coral Gables has 6-inch-tall concrete slabs painted white and etched with black lettering sitting on every street corner. The slabs all have prominently featured street names, and they also have numbers, but they're functionally useless. Look at them. They're teeny tiny. It's a purely aesthetic street sign with no function when street signs should primarily have function. All of this stupid slab shit made navigating Coral Gables in the pre-map app era a nightmare that I do not wish on any student driver or tourist. These sign slabs are unique to Coral Gables and for good reason. They are stupid and really easy to miss, just like I almost missed them while driving around in Driver 3. Holy shit, no way. Fuck off. Yeah, it's just an impractical little sign on the corner of the street. It's stupid, it's not a big deal, who cares, right? But this matters, man! This little slab represents a level of specificity that confirms something I had been feeling as I drove circles around the map. Edmondson and his team at Reflections truly observed a place. They soaked it in. They didn't just snap some pics of Miami Beach, had dinner at Joe's Stone Crab, and then called it a day. Where Vice City depicted a cartoony, ironically detached satirical hallucination, Driver 3 depicted sincerity. And they both somehow managed to feel like home to me. Just like how Flight Simulator feels like the Miami I know when I see it from the window seat of a plane. And how The Crew 2 feels like the Miami I know when I'm driving through downtown in a sports car and then I hit a button and it turns into a plane and I'm soaring over the buildings where I'm truly free. Some of the games I covered here captured something that taps into my senses and memories. The ones that succeeded pulled off the trick by not necessarily employing a trick at all. They just demonstrated a sincere devotion to depicting the only home I've ever known with accuracy, honesty, and the occasional poop joke. Maybe when it eventually releases, Grand Theft Auto 6 will be the new end-all be-all of Miami's representation in video games. But, somewhat surprisingly, it has its work cut out for it. It's going to have some pretty stiff competition from some 20-plus-year-old games, one of which was a part of its own series. Driver 3's specificity blows me away as much as Vice City's broad generalities. There is no winner here, just a lot of versions of the same place, sometimes under a different name. All these little digital dioramas are all my home, just viewed from different angles, painted with different brushstrokes. I didn't start doing all of this with the intent of declaring a winner. I wasn't trying to find the most Miami place in all of video games. I was just playing games, looking for home, and I think I found a few of them. But if there was a winner, it would be the Metal Wolf Chaos level where you pilot a mech and shoot helicopters on Miami Beach. There's no place like home, huh?